This is Gemara in Kiddushin, Daf Ayin Aleph, and we pick it up on the bottom of Ayin Amid Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. Amar Rav Chelbo, our hearts and minds, all our tefillos are chosim for Kol Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael and Esunim Batzara Uba Shivya. Amar Rav Chelbo continues by teaching us Kashim Gerim Li Yisrael. On the topic of Gerim, says Rav Chelbo, Gerim are difficult for Klal Yisrael, Kitsa Pachas, like Ksapachas, which is a skin ailment, a type of sarash. And Emar, Binilva Hager, Aleihem Vinispachu, Al Beis Yaakov, Ksevacha Vinispachu, Ksevasam, Laseis, Ulisapachas. The same word is used by Gerim, same word is used by Saras. Says the Gemara that Gerim are difficult for Klal Yisrael as many different explanations, whether the Gerim are more dedicated to that, which they do. Last line as we turn over to Ayin Aleph, Amid Aleph. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mitayer Shevatim, La'asid Lavai at the time of Beis HaMikdash, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mitayer Klal Yisrael, Shiftoi Shal Levi Mitayer Tchila, Hashem will begin with Sheva Levi. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Yashav Mitzvah U'Matar Kesef, Vatir Es Bnei Levi, and he will be Mitayer the children of Levi, Vizikek Oisam Kizavu Kesef, and he'll cleanse them like gold and silver. V'hayu Lahem Magishe Mincha, and they'll be like Hashem, like those who bring a carbon b'tzedakah in righteousness. Amar Yeshua ben Levi continues. Kesef mitaher mamzerim. A fascinating idea. Money is mitaher mamzerim. Now we have to know that here the word mitaher is really the end result. Of course, they don't actually buy their way out of mamzerus, but by buying their way into marrying those in Klal Yisrael, it eventually allows them to join Klal Yisrael and sort of mix in Shenem Rav Yoshev Mitzraf U'Mitaher Kesef, that once they marry in, we're going to allow them to stay that way. Magishe Mincha B'Tzedakah. What does the end of that pasuk mean? Amar Rav Yitzchak Tzedakah Yisrael Baruch Hu Yisrael Shemishpacha Shenitama Nitama. Now here the word Nitama means mixed in. That once a family gets mixed into Klal Yisrael, Hashem allows it to be that way, and that's what it means that Kesef is mitayr mamzerim. Of course, not really mitayr them. It means it allows them at some level to buy their way in, and once they buy their way in, then Hashem allows them to remain as part of Klal Yisrael. Continues the Gemara. Gufa Amar Rav Yehuda Mer Shmuel Kol Aretz Yisrael V'Eretz Yisrael Isa Lebavel. 3 lines from the wide lines, quoting the Mishnah that all lands are Isar, like Dot Eretz Yisrael, meaning that Eretz Yisrael is more genealogically fit, there's a higher level of Yuchsim than Kol HaRatzos. And Eretz Yisrael, though, is Isa LeBavel, meaning Bavel is more tar than Eretz Yisrael. Says the Gemara, B'mei Rabbi, the days of Rabbi Bikshu Lasses Bavel Isa Eretz Yisrael. They wanted to make Bavel Isa to Eretz Yisrael, meaning they wanted to make Eretz Yisrael more fit than Bavel. Amar lahen koitzim atem asim li beinai. You're putting a thorn between my eyes. You're putting a thorn between my eyes. 1 second. Ritzaini, Ritzainchem, if that's your will, Yitabchem Rav Chanina bar Chama. Rav Chanina bar Chama is going to deal with you. Rav Chanina bar Chama nitabel imayhem. Amar Lam, he said to them, Kach mekablani Rav Yishmael v'Rav Yosi. This is what I accepted. I have a Kabbalah on the second wide line from Rav Yishmael, Rav Yosi, Sham Misham Avel, Amar Misham Aviv, excuse me, Kol Eretz Yisrael, the Eretz Yisrael, Isa le Bavel, showing that Bavel is a more tar than even Eretz Yisrael. But Meir Pinchas, Bikshu Lasses Bavel Yisrael Eretz Yisrael, they want to do the same thing. So he said the following to his servant: I'm going to go to yeshiva. I'm going to say 2 dinim. After the second one, Teloini Barisa, put me in a stretcher v'yaroitzu and run out. Basically, he's telling his servant, I'm going to say something controversial and get me out of there before they harm me. He entered into the base medrash. Amar lahem, halacha number 1, he says, Ein shchita life min ha-Torah. There's no shchita to a burn midaraisa. So all the Talmidim at the Yasif Kamaini Ba, they're sitting there hacking the question, what exactly does he mean? And then he begged in Amar lahem a second halacha. Kol ha'ratzos Yisrael Eretz Yisrael v'Eretz Yisrael Bavel. And he's in Eretz Yisrael, and he says Eretz Yisrael is not as pure as Bavel Natalua Ba'arisa. So his servant heard, okay, that was the second halacha, that was his cue. He threw him in a stretcher, and Veratzu, and they ran out. And guess what? The Talmidim ran after him. Ratzu Acharav, they ran after him. They couldn't reach him. Yashu Badku, so the Talmidim sat down. They tried to figure out, what do you mean? Which families are the ones that are not miyuchas in Eretz Yisrael? Ashigil Saikana, Pirush became a Saikana, as they found certain of the strong families that were not pure and became a Saikana. They were going to harm them, and therefore they stopped investigating further. Amr Rav Yechlan Heichal Biyadenu. What should I do? He said, I have the ability to make tar. What should I do? As the Gedali Adar already mixed in ba. Something like Rav Yitzchak, Rav Yitzchak Mishmach Netma. Netma, as we've seen, once a family mixes in, we allow them to stay. Amr Rabbi Avanan Amitini, I learned as well. Mishmach is based at Srifa. Isa Bever Yardin, a certain family based at Srifa. Verichika. And we distance from them. Ben Sion, Rechika Ben Sion Bizra with force. Aida Charis, I said there was another family. Vikivra Ben Sion Bizraya. Kigoin Elu Eliyahu Balatame Ulatayr Larachik Ulakaroiv. Kigoin Eli Diadina, like these that they know of. Mishmach Nitmao. Meaning, Kigoin Elu Eliyahu Ba. These families, Eliyahu Navi is going to come and he's going to tell us which one were pure and which one were not, the ones that were known. But the other families, the ones that are not known, then once they're mixed in, we allow them to stay mixed in. Tana, we learned in Abraisa. Oida Charis, I said there was another family, they don't want to reveal who they were. Once every 7 years, they would give over the Messiah that these families were pure and these families were not as pure, so that they could remain and marry into the families which were pure. And some say it was twice in 7 years. It's logical to command once in 7 years. Why is that logical? Kid Tanya has learned in a brisa. Hareini Nazir, I will be a Nazir. It's better to be a Nazir, even though being a Nazir is not so pasha, than to reveal the identity of which families are miyuchas. So proves the Gemara, if you have a choice, that they did it once every 7, twice every 7. We're going to choose once every 7. As we see, we want to minimize the level of having to disclose which families are genealogically pure, miyuchas, and which are not. Amar Rabbi Rachana Amar Rav Yechlan Shem ben Arba Oisiyos. Once we're on the topic of that which is given over l'Messiah, given over to future generations, we go into the Shem Hashem, says Rabbi Rachana in the name of Rav Yechlan. The Shem of Hashem of 4 letters, Chachamim Moshe Sal Talmideyam. The Chachamim will make sure the Talmidim will know it. Pam Achas B'Shavua, once every 7 years. Some say twice in 7 years. Mistavra Slajal Commandem Pam Achas B'Shavua, once every 7 years. The Chsev, as the Pasuk says, Zeh Shemi La'olam La'aleim Ksev, it should be concealed. We should not give over the secret of the shame, even the shame of Ben Dalid Oisios. Rava Savar the Midjay Bipirka, Rava wanted to darshan in public how to say such a name of Yukei Vavke Amrlei, who Saba La'aleim Ksev. No, it says La'aleim, it should be concealed. It's not something that we teach publicly. Ravavina Rami Yasik contradicting Ksiv Zeh Shemi, Ksiv Zeh Zichri. It says on one hand it's my name, on the other hand it says it's my remembrance. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu. Loikish Ani Nichtav Ani Nikra. Says Hashem, the way my name is written is not the way that is written. Nichtav Ani B'Yod Hey. It's written Yod Kei Vav Kei Vav Nikra. How do we read the Shem Hashem? Aleph Dalid Nun Yod. Tan Rabban Rishon Hashem Men Shteim Esrei Oisi Ois. Originally the Shem Hashem of 12 letters. Every person knew it. Misha Rabu reads him. Those who acted incorrectly, they only gave over this name to those who would act discreetly. They would swallow it. During Dochaning, when the other Kohanim were saying the shame, the Tznuim would quickly say this name of 12 letters so that no one would be able to hear it. Tanya, the Gemara proves this. Why we learned in a Brisa, about 15 lines to the bottom. The first one line is Tanya. Omer Rav Tarfon Pamachas Alisi Achar Achi Imi L'Dochen. I went up behind my mother's brother, Dochan Vatisa Asli Yitzchak Kohen Gadol, and I put my ear next to the Kohen Gadol, and I wanted to hear the Shem Hashem, Shamati, and I heard Shavli Hashem ben Ima Achas Kohanim, that he swallowed it up while the other Kohanim were saying this Shem Hashem. Amar Rav Yudah Merav, Shem ben Arabah Mishtayim Oisius, the 42-letter name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ein Moses' son. We do not give it over. Lamisha Tsanua, one who is discreet, Va'anav, and is humble, Va'imid B'chatzi Yamav, has lived to have his days, 35 years. Ve'enoi Kais doesn't get angry, Ve'enoi Mishtakir doesn't get drunk, Ve'enoi Maimid Al Midaisav, and he does not stand on his Midais. V'chol HaYoidai, and anyone who knows such a name, Ve'hizir Bai, and is careful with it, Ve'shmiro, and he guards it, V'tahayra, Ohov Le'ma'alav V'nechel Lamati, he's beloved above, and he's desired below. Ve'emasai, Mutelas Alabrias, and his fear is placed on people. And he inherits two worlds, the next world and this world. Amar Shmuel Mishvei Desaba. Bavel b'chazkes k'sheir hamed. As Bavel, if someone comes from Bavel, they have a chazaka. We assume that they are kosher and until she'yadil chavaman nifsalah, unless you know that they became apostle. Shara ratzais. But other lands of the world, b'chaz is apostle, it's a foch. We assume they're apostle. Unless you know that they're kosher. Eretz Yisrael, muchsik le'apostle, apostle, muchsik le'kosher, kosher. Eretz Yisrael depends on the muchsikais, each person, whatever his presumed status is. So the Gemara asked the obvious kash in Eretz Yisrael. Hagufa kash in Amri, kash Amri, muchsik le'apostle, apostle, hastama kosher. V'adr Tani, and then it says muchsik le'kosher, kosher. So which one is it? Hastama apostle, sounds like the stam is apostle. So what is the stama of Eretz Yisrael? Marvuna bar Tachlif on the last line of Ayin Aleph Amid Aleph Mishmei Derav Loi Kasha. As we turn over to Ayin Aleph Amid Bey, he says the Gemara, it is not a question. Kan lesiya isha, kan loitzi isha miyadai. To marry a woman, stama ba'i bedika, we look into the woman, we don't assume she is kosher. But once you marry a woman, now you want to know if you should divorce her, you want to know what her status is. Once you marry her, then we assume that she is a ksheira. Continues the Gemara, Am Rav Yosef, Kosher sichasai be'Bavel, anyone who talks like a Babylonian, ma'asiyin la'isha, we marry him, a woman, we assume that he is kosher. But says the Gemara, 3 lines down, Ayin Aleph and Beis, unfortunately, and there are people who are Ramayim, they're tricksters, that they pretend that they know how to speak Babylonian. Therefore we have to be chayshish, we can't assume that they are tar. Ziri avikom mishtamit minei Rav Yochanan. Ziri did not want to bump into Rav Yochanan. Why? Davi Amar Le Nesiv Brate. Because Rav Yochanan wanted Ziri to marry his daughter. Problem was Ziri came from Bavel, and Ziri did not want to marry Rav Yochanan's daughter, who was from outside of Bavel. Yom Echad, one day, Havikazli Baruch, Rav Yochanan and Ziri were going in the road. Mati Lorkuma Demai, they reached the river. Arkvele Rav Yochanan Kasei Ziri gave Rav Yochanan a ride on his shoulders. Come Aver Lane, he was crossing the river with him. Amar Lane, Rav Yochanan says, Araisa Ksheira. My Torah is kosher, you carry me across the river, but nothing like a sharon. My daughter is not, my daitoch ilim, it's not. If you're worried about the fact that it says Asar Yochsan al Bavel, Kohani Levi, and I'm not from Bavel. So Atu Kohani Levi, Yisrael Kulus Liki, Kechi, Deshtaru Mehani. So said Rav Yochanan, what do you mean? Certainly were some Kohanim that were left behind, the Mehani. Deshurmani, Shurnamani. Says Rav Yochanan, there were some kosher people left behind, and my daughter is one of those kosher people. Ishtamitze, says the Gemara, no. Rav Yochanan did not know that which Amar Rav Elazar Ezra Mibavel Ad She'asak Yisraelis Nekiya Va'ala, that Ezra took up everyone with him. Those left behind were absolutely pure, and that's the reason why Zeiri did not want to marry the daughter of Rav Yochanan. Ula Eklal Pambedisa. Ula visited Pambedisa Labei Rav Yehuda Chazil Rav Yitzchak Yisar Rav Yitzchak Braid Rav Yehuda. They got of Lai Nasif. He was getting older and he wasn't married. Amar Le My Time Aloikam and Asif Le Mar. Why are you not married? It's to a wife. It's a libre. Amar Le, why don't you marry a wife to your son? Amar Le Mia Dina Mecha Nasif. How should I marry someone? How do I know who's kosher? Amar Le, what do you mean? This is hundreds of years after Ezra went up to Bavel. Amar Le, Anan Miyadina Mechal Kasinan. Do we know where we came from? Were we so sure that we ourselves are kosher? Dilma, perhaps, maybe we ourselves come from those that it's written, Yehuda, that they went up and they defiled these women, v'chitim, and maybe you're going to say, no, Akam Eved Abba, Vlad Kasha, that even if such a story happened, but the Vlad of an Akam and Eved is Kasha, V'dilma mehanach t'chsevu, maybe we came from those that it says, Shivcham al mitois, sheinu tzrucham al risoisam, that they acted immorally, and they were not tar. 3 lines from the wide lines. What did these psukim mean? What were the aveiros that these people did? If they made the same aron, they used to urinate in front of their beds, undressed. Ravua would give them malchus, would yell at them. Says the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Megad Ravua, and Ravua laughed, and he said, you're telling me what they did was, it's not such a nice thing to urinate in front of your bed undressed, but if that's what they did, they went to Galus first. It's not a nice thing, but is that a reason to go into Galus first? Is that really what you think they did? Asks Rav Avua. Elam Rav Avua on the second white line says Rav Avua, no. This was much worse than merely using the bathroom in front of their bed. Much, much worse. Says Rav Avua, those are the first two people. They would eat and drink with each other, and they would place their beds together. They would swap their wives, and they would putrefy their beds with zera, with seed which was not their own. So then he said, okay, so you're right. Maybe we ourselves are not kosher. So what should I do? Who should I marry my son off to? You know what we do? Zil basar shtikusa. Look for someone who's quiet. Ki hai debatkinu arav. This is how they checked in Eretz Yisrael. Kimintu beichei when two people will fight with each other. Chazi hai minau. They called him v'shasi. They looked for whichever one was quiet first. And Amri, they would say the one that was quiet. Time yuchas tvei. Silence. Humility shows that you have good yichus. That's what you should look for. Marry such a person to your son. Amar Rav Sheikusa the Bavel Hani Yechusi, that in Bavel that's as well as they would check the yichus if we were quiet. Amy asked the Gemara, Rav went up and it sounds like he looked into their yichus. Says the Gemara, exactly, my lab. You just checked if they were quiet. That's only if they had a good yichus. Check into them. If they were quiet, then we assume they had good yichus. Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav, if they're fighting, we don't want them as possible. One of the families must be possible. So now, different places and their status, said Rav said Rav Yudah Amar Rav. One more time. Says Rav Yeshua ben Levi, not what we just had, says Rav Baba Samishri, the Rav Bavel is Bria. Bavel is healthy, meaning we assume the people are kosher. Meishan is Mesa, everyone's not kosher. Madai is Chayla, is sick. Elam is Goiseses, is on the death rows. Ma'be Chayla and Goisim, what's the difference in these two places? If they're both, one's sick, one's dying, they both don't seem so great. Says Gemara, no, Rav Chayla Chaim, it's a Rav. The majority of someone who's sick will live, so the majority of those people are Lemaisa kosher. Rav Goisin Lemisa Arech and Bavel. So now that we know that Bavel is more kosher than everywhere else, ask the Gemara a map question. How far does Bavel go? Says the Gemara. Let's open up a map. Rav Amar an Nahar Razak to the river of Razak. Shmuel Amar an Nahar Yoini Leel B'Digles. Says Shmuel, it goes to Adahar Yoni, the river of Yoni. How far does it go upward on the Tigris? Adechon Rav Amrad Bagda ve'Avni, says Rav until Bagda and Avni, and says Shmuel Amar Ad Mushchini until Mushchini. V'loy Mushchini beklav, says called Mushchini is not included. I've Amar Rav Chia Barabba Amar Shmuel Mushchini Arei Ki Goyla Liochs, and is considered like Goyla with regard to Yochsin, and Moshli is Bichlal. Letachlis v'diglas ha'ich, on the bottom of this Tigris, how far downward does Bavel extend? Amar of Shmuel ad Apamya Tata, until up lower Apamya. Tarti Apamya Hava, and says the Gemara, there are two places called Apamya Hava, Chad Lamiditav Chad Tatai, Chad Gshera, Chad Psula, one is Kasha, one is Pasul. Ben Chad Chadam, to each and every one. Parsa v'kolkapti avdad, in these two places were makban on each other. Nura lo mishli avdad, they wouldn't even lend a fire one to another. V'simanech t'psula ha t'mishtayis mishnis la'el b'pras. And the simon to remember which is ha t'mishtayis mishnis, the place that the language they speak mishnis meshan, that is the place that is kasha la'el b'pras at echan. Upward from Prasa till where Rav Amar at Ikra to Tulbankni, Ushmul Amar at Gishra, the Bay Pras, until the Euphrates River, Rav Yechanan Amar ad Ma'averes, the Gizma, says Rav Yechanan, until the Gizma crossing. And we'll stop over here, and tomorrow we'll pick it up, furthering discussing the exact parameters, borders of Bavel.